What is up, Fanatics? It's 8 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means another episode of Home Theater Fanatics Live. Tonight is episode 135. That's right, 135. And we have a great episode for you. Today, we've got Chuck Back of Trinnov Audio. That's right, that Trinnov, the one, the only, the big T. And we're going to talk all about immersive 3D audio, Atmos, and some really cool things that are happening with the product line that I think everybody's going to be excited about, because I was extremely excited about it. It's super cool. But anyway, we'll get to that. But first, Chuck, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Thanks, Jiles. I'm doing great.
Awesome.
Glad to be here with everybody.
Yeah. And you know, we're super, super happy to have you with us. Maybe we can kick off the show with just letting everybody know who you are, and then we'll get into a little bit about what Trinnov does for those that might not be familiar.
I'm you could characterize me as a lifer in the audio business, 40 plus years. Started in college selling hi-fi while I was a college student, but most of my career was with M&K Sound. I was the executive vice president, essentially was the one who ran the company day to day when Ken Kreisel was off in his laboratory being the mad scientist designing loudspeakers.
Sure.
And that was a great run. Unfortunately, the company did close. It actually outgrew itself. After I left, I became a partner in a company that I'm still working with, separate from Trinnov, called Procella Audio. We make very high performance European manufactured loudspeakers for serious home theaters.
Right.
And I was fortunate enough to be able to join the Trinnov team very early in the Trinnov expansion into the United States. I worked for the distributor that originally sold Trinnov. And then when Trinnov took over the distribution directly and set up a U.S. company, I was able to move over and become one of the managing directors.
I would say that was an excellent move.
Yes, I'm very fortunate. At this point in my career, I'm getting to play with expensive toys, and it's just what I want to be doing.
You know, just a comment. It seems like there was or have been a lot of folks that, you know, got their start or worked with Ken and M&K, you know, back in the day. I mean, I've had a number of guests on that say, yeah, I remember I did this with those guys back then. It's interesting how, you know, the things kind of bloomed out from there, and you know, where everybody kind of left and went and landed and that kind of thing.
Exactly. It traces back to the Jonas Miller hi-fi story. Jonas Miller was really everyone's mentor. And he was one of the grand old men of audio, one of the very first true high-end dealers in the US.
Awesome.
He shop in Beverly Hills. And so we all came through that portal and spread through the industry. Right
on. And so today you find yourself at Trinnov, and let's talk a little bit. What does Trinnov do? And, you know, I know what you do, and it's really cool because it takes a product that everyone that has a home theater has a version of, but it has taken it and just moved it up, you know, 8 different levels to I think a level that most people had not anticipated when you guys launched way back in the day. So let's talk a little bit about what you do.
Well, I'd like to trace it back to the launch of the company, even before the launch of the company, which has a lot to do with the advancements that Trinnov has made. The 3 founding partners were college students. They were taking advanced studies in acoustics, and their interest was a hobby for listening to music, but they were more serious. They really are scientists. They wanted to advance audio technology. And this is around the year 2000. At that time, we had 24-bit 96 kilohertz resolution coming, and that was something that could be improved slightly, but not significantly. So they decided to pursue research into spatial audio. They recognized that the spatial aspect of audio was not really being recognized and addressed in research and in products. So they started doing research into 3D audio back over 20 years ago. And they were building rooms with multiple speakers that look very much like a DTS laboratory does today, and finding how to approach, capture, and reproduce spatial audio, 3D audio, immersive audio. That led into the recognition that it was one thing to put a lot of speakers in a room. It's another thing to get a coherent sound field where it replicates what we hear in real life. And that led to the creation of the optimizer technology, which is the speaker in room correction, which corrects the impulse response of all the speakers, corrects for phase, and in addition to the normal kinds of amplitude response corrections that room systems fix. So we're looking at impulse response, we're looking at phase, we're looking at levels, and they found that when that was corrected, the coherent sound field, basically a half hemisphere of sound, was achievable. And that led into the creation of their first products, which were optimizers sold into recording studios.
Right. And so I think that's interesting because I think most people on kind of my side of the world viewing Trinnov see you guys as kind of a home theater company, but really you guys do a lot more than just the 16 and the 32, right?
Right. There's actually three divisions. So three different sales organizations within the company. There's the high end, which is the home theater products, and we also have hi-fi products. And then there is the cinema division, which is starting to come back to life. We actually make commercial cinema processors. That business, unfortunately, hasn't been very active for the last couple of years. For obvious reasons, but the real launch of the company commercially was selling to pro. And in that category, it's recording studios and post-production for cinema. And that is a huge category, and it's been growing enormously. It's been very successful over the last year.
That's awesome. So let's shift gears just a little bit. I think people kind of understand now, the breadth of the portfolio, but this is Home Theater Fanatics. So,
Mhm.
I like to talk about the products that people can purchase and have in their homes. And that would really be the Altitude 16 and Altitude 32. So specifically, what are those products for, and what kind of makes them stand apart?
Well, they're immersive audio processors. The Altitude 16 is the entry point. It is a 16-channel processor, limited to 16 channels, whereas the Altitude 32, which is the flagship, comes in four versions. There's an 8-channel version, 16-channel, 24-channel, and 32-channel.
Hmm.
And there's also an additional box that can be added to the 32-channel device that'll take it all the way up to 48 channels
And,
and up to 64 outputs.
and these are so 48. This is 48 discrete channels of processed audio, right?
Well, the limitation in discrete rendering would be the Atmos or DTSX format. And Atmos is 34 channels for the home, and DTS is 30 plus 2.
I'm just trying to think, in my room, how many feet would I have between speakers?
Right. It's a
if I
continuous wall. It's wall of sound.
Oh, but you could take that maximum though and then map out, if you had, the maximum number of outputs, you could map those different channels that meet the spec to all your speakers. So you could light them all up if you wanted to, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And what happens in those really high channel count systems is the use of two-way, three-way, biamp or triamplified loudspeakers, 6 subwoofers, 8 subwoofers,
Oh, you're talking my language now.
yeah, large large numbers of output channels. So it's not necessarily once you get past a certain point, it's not about the discrete rendering. We've hit the maximum. Then we're going to go into higher performance systems with multi-amplification and multiple subwoofers.
Right on. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the new stuff then. And you guys just made an announcement. I mean, this was not very long ago at all, about something that I didn't expect at all, because it's kind of it's not something that you see a manufacturer do very often to an existing product that almost reinvents it from my point of view anyway. But what did you do for the 16 and the 32 that?
Yeah, it is really exciting, and the response has been tremendous. We're calling it the Plus 4 upgrade, and it is a software upgrade that will be available in October, probably around the midpoint of October, and it will add 4 additional output channels and decoding channels to both the Altitude 16 and any version of the Altitude 32.
Wow.
And because the Trinnov processors are not based around the mass market produced chipsets that other manufacturers use for their Dolby and DTS processing, we're built around an Intel multi-core processor
Hmm.
running our own Linux operating system and our own custom software. So we can do this by upgrading the software. And it will be a free upgrade available to any Altitude owner going back to serial number 1. And that will get them completely up to date. This will be implemented in 2 different ways, depending on the processor. The Altitude 16 has only analog outputs. And so one of our engineers, in a brilliant inspiration, came up with the idea of using the Toslink output, the optical output of the Altitude 16, to feed an ADAT, ADAT format audio signal into an external DAC, internal digital analog converter.
Right.
The ADAT format is used in recording studios, very often in home studios, to carry multiple channels of audio in this specific format. The typical application is 8 channels at 48 kilohertz, but we are using 4 channels, which means we can go to 96 kilohertz. So
Right.
those outputs are going to be 24-bit 96K 4 channels. And in order to take advantage of this, the Altitude owner will have to purchase an external ADAT box. And they're made by pro audio companies, Focusrite, PreSonus, Aphex, Tascam, companies like that. The entry level price is about $500, and then you can go up from there to as much as you want to spend, I suppose. And we will be issuing a list of compatible devices for people who are
If
interested
you
in
think
upgrading.
about it, so at the entry level with a 16, you're effectively giving people a $500 upgrade just because you need the external hardware
Right.
to increase their channel count by 25%.
Yep. Yeah. Well, it's going to enable them to do a 9.1.6
That's what I
Atmos
was going to get to,
implementation.
right?
Yeah, with 4 subwoofers.
Exactly.
And that is kind of a sweet spot for systems.
That is an extremely huge sweet spot for systems. I think most of the kind of the pre-canned chipsets that you mentioned before, they roll up to about 16 channels, right?
Right.
And there's a limitation there, because if you want to go with what I would consider the full home theater experience that you see kind of in the top end mid-range theaters, right? Just kind of like the kind of people like me, right? Not a multi-million-dollar home theater, but people will do 9-bed channels, 6 channels in the air,
Mhm.
but they want to have 4 subs. And when you have 20 channels, that'll get you up to 19, and then you can even do the extra sub if you want.
Yeah.
And there's enough horsepower in the CPU to manage
Absolutely.
all of
Yeah.
that.
To do that. And all of the correction, all of the measurements, all of the optimization will be done in the Altitude.
Right on. Okay, so that's cool. But in the 32, you don't even need an add-on. It's just
Well,
software
you
switch and
you will need an external DAC, but it's a more conventional DAC. The
okay.
Altitude 32 has digital outputs, and with the AES EBU digital outputs, we can bring 4 channels out to go to any high-end DAC. Any high-performance DAC will have AES EBU inputs, and so
So
that's simpler.
yeah, Travis says that his Altitude 16 shipped
Ah,
today and will be there on Monday.
Congratulations! That's
Welcome
great.
to the family, Travis. That's awesome. Now, to go along with the 4 additional channels, you guys have also announced the inclusion of IMAX Enhanced in
Correct.
your gear. So what does that really mean for
Well,
people?
IMAX Enhanced is kind of a proprietary um, software, meaning content and playback system. So you will be able to. There are a few today, but you will be able to purchase Blu-ray discs that have IMAX enhanced content. and IMAX enhanced content will also be available on streaming services.
Okay.
There's been talk, but nothing formal about a major streaming service offering IMAX enhanced at some point in the future, probably in November, but that hasn't been revealed in detail yet. Uh, Basically, IMAX enhanced is enhancement of the image with some proprietary noise reduction systems to make the larger screen playback uh, clearer and less grainy and less noisy. There is a feature for setting the aspect ratio automatically for a film. So that will be encoded on the disc, and in playback, the display or the projector will automatically change the aspect ratios. It's HDR10, so there's high dynamic range, of course. The sound is DTS. The goal is to have uncompressed sound, so it's not squished in a sense for
Right.
home theater playback, so you
Sure.
get the full IMAX sound experience. It's basically a 7.2.4 approach. Obviously, you can use more speakers and it will work better, particularly in an altitude. In altitude, you'll be able to go up to the full channel count of the processor. But one significant thing to consider is there's no base management in the system. The channels are set up as full range, or rather, there's no LFE. So the base management becomes critical.
Oh,
So
right. Oh, so there's no LFE in that at all? Interesting.
right. So
Yeah.
it's full range, and so proper configuration of base management will be necessary unless you happen to have a lot of very large full range speakers.
Well, I was gonna say, all I heard there was, I need to buy a subwoofer for each channel,
Right.
especially for the Atmos channels.
So maybe not so practical.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they wouldn't be Atmos channels in this, but for the heights. How do
But
I mount subwoofers on my ceiling?
yeah, it's done.
I
Oh,
know
yeah.
it, and it's awesome. It is
This
very cool.
this even brings back memories of the very early days of working with DTS when there was DTS music and
Mhm.
music mixing, and DTS folks are rather insistent that people use full range speakers and not redirect bass to subwoofers. So that's something that's in the DTS DNA that apparently is still there today.
Well, it's very interesting. So I visited a number of recording studios, or really mixing studios in California, as well as a location called Icons, which is a screening
Mhm.
facility used by the motion picture houses and people like Netflix and that kind of stuff. And I talked to the engineers there, and I said, "Well, what's your philosophy around speakers and that kind of thing?" And their goal is to run each channel as full range as is possible,
Mhm.
right? So, they don't subscribe to the idea of, let's cross everything over at 80 hertz, kind of the standard home theater kind of thing, and then use base management to deal with that. They want to full range everything as much as possible, and then LFE channel obviously will go out to the subs. But
Right.
that was a kind of an eye opener for me. This was many years ago, because I had kind of been brought up in just the, very small home theater kind of setting and group and people that I spoke to, and I didn't have that larger vision. But when I talked to them, they were like, "Oh no, that's not how we do it." I was like, "What?" So
Well,
yeah,
it's also how it's done in cinema. In
yeah,
commercial cinema, all the screen speakers are full range,
mhm,
and by cinema definition, that's extension to 40 hertz.
right,
And then the surrounds generally are smaller and don't extend as deep. But the LFE is the only signal in commercial cinema that's going to the subwoofers.
right. I
Uh,
think everyone has something to aspire to now in their system. I think they all need at least the altitude 16, right?
yes.
And then full range across. And if you need to, just buy subs to extend out your
Yeah.
your current
Subwoofers are
speakers.
fine. Yeah,
Yeah,
we've got extremely flexible bass management, so we can manage any number of subwoofers.
right. And I think that's really part of the magic, because that's the difficult frequency range to manage, the stuff that's going out to your subs. So my hat's off to you guys for that, because it really is outstanding.
Great.
All right, so let's also shift gears a little bit more now, and this goes back to that comment that I threw up before, where Travis said that he was going to be receiving his altitude 16,
Mhm.
and we were actually chatting about this a little bit earlier today, And I think one of the misconceptions that people have about Trinnov is that it is really only a product that can be bought uh, in conjunction with pro installation services, right? Maybe a custom installer
Mhm.
kind of thing, or you have to go out and buy this at some shop and you have to pay them to install it. But that's not true at all, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The working with a calibrator is always recommended. That will achieve um, the best possible results. But in reality, that is an expensive proposition. And for the aspiring altitude owner, the message that I want to get clear is that calibrating an altitude is a very straightforward process. It is not terribly time consuming unless you want to experiment, which is something the hobbyist can do. But
Mhm.
uh, setting up the microphone, taking a measurement is something that can be done in minutes. And we make that easy for the first time user because we have a wizard on board the altitude. And that wizard walks that first time setup, walks that first time user through the setup process, everything from connecting the microphone, placing the microphone, and measuring the speakers, and then doing the adjustments. So that is something that is commonly done. We have a lot of the hobbyist types, the enthusiasts tend to do that on their own, whereas the people who are buying the 500,000 and up home theaters
The people that
who
just
are,
sign the checks.
yeah, they shine the check and
Yeah.
it just comes, they want someone to come in and dial it in for them, and they're just going to come in and push buttons and watch movies. But for those who are really into it and want to take advantage of the fine tuning capability, getting started is very straightforward. And we're happy to help you with that. The reality is that every Trinnov processor that is connected to a network that gets to the internet calls back to our server in Paris. And through that server and our intranet, I and the support team and John Heron in Connecticut can connect to that machine remotely and see all of the functions and have all of the controls over that machine. So if someone is doing an initial setup and they want some assistance, we can log in alongside them and step them through the calibration.
That
And
that
that
is
is something
outstanding.
we're happy to do. That's part of the benefit of owning a Trinnov.
Yeah, I dare anybody to try and find any of the mass market kind of brands that will offer to help with with the setup and the calibration. It's just not going to happen. So my take home message here then is, if you're a home theater enthusiast and you feel comfortable, going to Best Buy and buying an AVR and then using any of the setup tools that they have, when they decide to move to the next level and move to like a 16 altitude 16, the process for them is going to be no more difficult than what they've experienced in the past. If they can be successful with kind of a more entry level product, then they will be able to be just as successful with the Trinnov gear.
Yeah, and they'll achieve a higher level of performance, obviously, because
Right.
that calibration will be very good to excellent. Uh, if they want to go beyond that, then there is the option to bring someone in to spend 2 or 3 days uh, calibrating, moving subwoofers, finding optimum locations. But again, that enthusiast is going to have experience over time, and if that enthusiast owns a microphone, he'll be able to take additional calibrations in the future and make additional adjustments. And in fact, taking additional measurements isn't necessarily indicated. Once a good measurement is taken, all of the captured information is stored on the altitude itself. And we have 29 presets available so that user can make fine adjustments or large adjustments to things like target curves and speaker levels and the other deeper tools that we have, save the change in a new preset, and then have something to compare to the previous settings to see if they're making an improvement or not, and incrementally work their way to better sound.
That's cool. So I think people should get, 3 or 4 buddies going together. Everybody get your own altitude 16, then buy one of the cool Trinnov microphones and everybody knows the one I'm talking about because it's the only one that looks like it. Here it comes.
I'm here. It is. Here's the
That one, the really, really cool
let me get
microphone.
this.
And then they could just share it
4
around.
elements. Yeah.
Take a measurement and then tweak to your heart's content. That's cool. All right. So we're going to move on now to segment 2 of the show. And let me see if I can get some music here. All right. So now you know all about Trinnov, but there's a burning question. And we always phrase this question as the tech topic of the week. And today's tech topic of the week is, what is Dolby Atmos music? How can you get it? And why would you even want it in the first place? And we have the expert on everything multi-channel and spatial audio with us, Chuck Back of Trinnov. Welcome, sir.
Hey, thanks again.
To section 2 of the show.
Indeed, yes.
So that's the question. This whole Dolby Atmos music thing, what's up with that? And why does anybody care about it?
Well, I'm going to start talking about immersive music and then segue into Atmos music as a lead-in, because there's really 2 aspects to the to music playback on a good home theater system like one that's using Trinnov Altitude. In the Altitude and in other processors, there are what we call upmixers. These are settings that can be used for stereo or 5.1 or 7.1 content that extract information and send that extracted information to all the channels in the system. So if we just have a 5.1, say we have a 5.1 concert recording to talk about music, using an upmixer is going to send information to the high channels and create a more immersive experience. The Trinnov processors are all Roon endpoints.
Which is awesome, by the way. It's outstanding.
Yeah, Roon is very popular. A lot of Trinnov owners have adopted Roon after learning about it. Just very briefly, it's an extremely high audio quality transmission. It can be used for streaming music from Tidal. It can be also used for playback of music that you have stored on a hard drive in your system. Roon is not an immersive format. It's just stereo and you can do 5.1 and 7.1. But what we have found is that even the hardcore stereo audiophiles who say that I'm a 2-channel stereo music fanatic, that's all I listen to.
2-channel for life. Yeah.
They find out when they get an Altitude and use an upmixer, and I'm going to speak about a specific upmixer, the Oro 3D. They find that the improvement in the listening experience and the life-like nature of the sound, the natural concert sound, is so compelling that they're using the upmixer for listening to everything now. And the Oro upmixer comes from Oro 3D. That format was born from Galaxy Studios in Belgium. Wilfred van Balen is the owner and founder of the studio, and he's the creator of the format. Because it's from a music background, it's a much better upmixing format for listening to music.
Right.
And therefore, it sounds better for music than the Dolby Atmos upmixer, which is called Dolby Surround, or the DTS-X Neural X upmixer, which are very good for movies, but are not as good for music. So that's the first, I think the first entry point to immersive music is just using the upmixers and discovering what can be done with existing material. But the thing that I'm really excited about and really encouraged is the rapid and widespread adoption of Dolby Atmos music. Atmos music is music mixed in the Atmos format for playback on an Atmos speaker system. And it's going to use whatever combination of speakers you have. Typically, these are mixed in 7.1.4 or 9.1.6 systems. And as with music recordings in stereo, they run the gamut of very simple presentations where it might sound like you're live in a room with musicians, or even a solo musician, to crazy sound bouncing all over the room, using every speaker, things moving sideways, up and down, and lots of subwoofer activity, in order to create an artistic experience that the musicians and the producers want to create. I would say that the live recordings are probably the ones that benefit the most, but the things that are some of the newer recordings are getting very the ones that are being released now are getting very ambitious. Probably the most notorious one is the new Yellow album called
Oh, yeah.
Point,
Yeah.
which is just crazy. There's just sound everywhere and moving around all the time.
So
Uh,
to get started then in Atmos music, what's the equipment that's necessary for that?
So, in addition to obviously having a receiver or a separate processor that decodes Atmos, you'll need a device that can stream it. So, typically, this is in the higher end systems. It's going to be an Apple TV 4K, either the second generation or the latest one that has come out recently. The NVIDIA Shield can also be used, and those are the primary ones that we're finding in the higher end theaters.
Right, and those are
Uh,
the two sources that I always recommend for people if they want to get into streaming. Those are the two: NVIDIA Shield, Apple TV 4K, new one. Absolutely, the right choices. Yeah,
and there are literally thousands of cuts available today that can be streamed.
that's awesome.
So it is, and it, to my take, it's not really being promoted as aggressively as it should be, and I don't think it's as widely understood, and that's why I think it's really important to talk about.
Awesome.
Um,
Well, look for a video for me in the not too distant future where I go over Atmos music, and I will help spread the word because you've got me super excited about the technology, and I've honestly not used it very much, and I've got
yeah,
access to all the tools, so why not, right?
exactly, and I have some recommendations for titles, but browsing the either the title app on the Apple TV or the Apple Music listings. Just search for Atmos.
Right on. And so, and are those the two streaming sources outside of the hardware that you would recommend? So, Tidal and Apple Music.
Yes, yeah, those are
I don't.
the
Does anybody else do it? I Those are the only two I can think of off the top of my head that
no, those
actually.
yeah. Well, there is some limited with Amazon Music, but I'm not as familiar with it, and I'm not sure that it's uh, playable right now for a high end system.
Right.
That's why I gravitate towards the NVIDIA and the Apple TV.
Awesome. Great. Well, everyone, you heard it here. Atmos, music, immersive music, up mixers. These are all cool things that I bet everyone here has access to already and probably or maybe not has looked into because I think at this point a some type of processor or AVR with Atmos capability is pretty ubiquitous for this crowd, and more people than not have an NVIDIA Shield or an Apple TV. So
Mhm.
give it a shot. You've got access. Might as well give it a ring and see what happens.
Yep. It's
Cool.
a it's a new world of creativity.
Awesome.
A lot of
So,
fun.
Chuck, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. Trinnov is one of my absolute favorite technologies in the whole home theater realm. It is the center of the universe for your system. Everything feeds into it, and everything feeds out of it, and it creates the magic that binds it all together. So, I would recommend everyone take a look at your products if they haven't done so yet, and if they're thinking about upgrading or starting their new theater and they can swing a 16, man, what a right way to get things started. I mean, it's really good. But thank you for coming on.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's my pleasure, and well, I encourage anyone with any questions to reach out. They can contact me through the website.
Awesome. Yeah, and down in the notes, I'll make sure there are plenty of links so everybody can find your brand, contact information, and if they're interested, who to talk to, and step that journey forward with Trinnov.
Great.
All right, Chuck,
Thanks,
take care.
everyone.
Thank you again.
All right. Cheers.
All right, that means it's time for section 3 of the show. All right, so I'm not going to read the little intro. because we have a special guest tonight, and he's been on my show once before, I think, something like that. Well, this is going to be number 2, and it's the one, the only, the spare change, but he's not very spare because he is required.
He's
Hey,
been
man,
on 0 times before.
Zero. No. Oh, I was on your show one time.
You're on my show, yeah.
I was on your show. See, I just assumed that, it's my show. Your show is my show. Welcome.
That's true.
Thank you so much for coming on to Content Corner.
What's up, man? Has a nice show. I see you have everything all like sectioned off, professionally done.
Oh, I know.
Impressed.
I have like the scripts and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, it's legit in here.
Very impressed.
And
question is, when are you getting your Altitude 16?
I'm working hard, man. I'm earning money every week, and we'll see when my wife lets me, flip the switch on that. But when I do, I'll make sure everybody in the whole world knows. And it's kind of interesting, the conversation that we just had around, how people can set this up themselves. I think that's a very interesting conversation around the Trinnov product line, because some people think that it's not something that they could ever get into. It would be out of their reach. It would be unrealistic. I guarantee them, if I can do it, they can do it, right?
Super easy.
And you run Trinnov at home yourself, right?
Yes, I do run a Trinnov at home. Just for you, just so you guys know that are in the chat, they gave it to me for free. I got the big boy. It's like 35 grand. They were just like, Shane, I'm just gonna give it to you for free because I'm a Trinnov.
That's how you roll.
I'm just kidding.
I bought it. One thing that I think is really awesome, and one use case for your Altitude that I really, really like, is the piece of software, which is the Atmos Visualizer.
Yes. The Atmos Visualizer.
That thing is outstanding. And I've tried to find a way to emulate that without that tool, and I have failed so far. Because that tool is outstanding. And when you want to look and see what's going on in some piece of content that you're watching, you can see all the objects move around. And I have a lot of people always say, "Oh, I watched this movie and it didn't have any Atmos at all."
Yeah.
And I can call BS on that anecdotally, but I don't have a way to show that. But you do with that tool, which is outstanding.
Yeah, I think I had somebody that made a video when I reviewed a couple movies, and I was just like, hey, man, this is like a 10 for audio. It's like one of the best mixes I've heard. And then I guess they made a video saying like, there's nothing in these Atmos mixes because I don't hear it on my Denon 4000 or whatever it was. And then luckily enough, they came out with this update. But I was like, and I watched all the movies that I gave 10s to, and I was like, just so you guys know, it actually is a 10. And I'm actually hearing these effects in these upper channels and side channels. So I mean, I think once you get to a certain level in your AV gear, I'm not trying to knock mid-range gear or anything like that, but I don't think that type of stuff can quite decode sound as good as, like, say, some upper tier stuff. So if you're like mid-range type of guy, you might have a hard time hearing the stuff that's coming in the high channels or in the surround channels. I think once you get upper tier stuff, maybe better amplification, more capable decoding chips or whatever's in your AVR, that you're going to hear the stuff better calibration software as well is going to help you get the better effects. So when I hear people saying that Atmos is gimmicky, it sounds like crap. I haven't had mid-range gear for a while, so I'm sorry. but there's definitely the stuff that you think sounds like crap most likely really sounds really good. You're just kind of missing out on it.
Yeah. And, Trinnov is uniquely situated in the market because, they run their own code set on top of Linux. So they're not restricted by any piece of silicon, right? So they haven't gone out and bought a chipset from someone. They run their own code with their own optimization that they have full access to and can do anything they want to with their fleet of programmers. So if anybody was going to be able to do it right, it would be these guys.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Oh yeah, for sure. And plus, the visual. Sometimes I don't even find myself watching the movie. I'll be looking at my iPad screen at the visualizer.
I'm so jealous, dude.
It's pretty distracting.
I can't help it. I'm turning green with envy over here, and it's not often I say that. You have a great setup, and I'm all like, oh, he's got his Macintosh, and he's got and those things are all cool, right? But for me, the one piece that I look at and I say that is a differentiator is the processor. I mean,
And
that's
it's like when you spend them, I know it's tough to come up with the funds at first, but if you think as in the long run, the past like maybe 4 or 5 years that I've owned stuff, I've always bought like flagship AVRs, which is like $3, $4, $5,000, sometimes
I
$6,000,
know it's kind of ridiculous, right?
and you always upgrade.
I
If there's
know
a newer one,
you can
you're always
never
going to
get
upgrade.
off of that freaking treadmill of upgrading.
You figure you bought 2 flagship AVRs for like $6,000 a pop. I mean, you're only a couple grand away, maybe $2,000 away or $3,000 away from an actual
From a 16,
16.
right? Yeah.
Whereas if you would have bought it back in 2015 or 2016, I mean, it's already kind of paid for itself. You saved yourself maybe 2-3 generations of AVRs from then till now. And you're still getting more upgrades. You're getting extra 4 channels if you bought that piece, from 2016.
Yeah, even like you said, serial number 0. They all get it.
Yeah, dude, totally worth. I wish I could be like totally worth it, but I mean, it's tough for everybody's budget. But if you have the
if you can
means and you
afford
can
it,
save, if you can save,
it's worth it.
It's
worth
tough
it.
to save up sometimes. That's
I
tough to
think
save
that
16 grand, 18 grand.
I think most of the people watching this show, they are the target market of it's worth it. Right?
I hope so. I hope so.
Right on.
I mean, I think this is probably like their busiest year they've had as far as, from what I've heard. And it's funny because during the pandemic, it seems like everybody's buying everything from like high-end speakers, AVRs, and cars. I bought a car today, and they were just like, "This is our best." Yeah, they're like, "This is our best year for sales." I was like, "How is that?"
I mean, I know you looked for that Yugo for years to find that one that was still in pristine condition.
It's probably a collector's item. Yeah.
Oh, that would be. How many are left that haven't been rolled over?
Yeah, right.
But a couple of things. Hi-Fi Haven says he's got mid-range. He gets plenty of Atmos. That's good. I think it's probably a testament to your skill of setup. Hi-Fi Haven is pretty good with stuff. He's digging my shirt. Mike says maybe because it's very dark. This is the mic aesthetic. I should have made it tighter though. I don't know why I should make it tighter, but I feel like I should make it tighter. Brolic Media is up in the house. All right, this guy right here, he is continually working on me with all this cool technology, and I think I'm going to be sold on Control 4 here pretty soon. So
yeah, buddy.
Oh man, I don't know.
You got to come up with something. Your Harmony Elite's kind of dead already.
Oh, I know, and I'm all Harmony all the time because that was the you can kind of do it yourself tool as opposed to the you can't do it yourself tool. Sofa Baton's coming out with their new one, but I don't know.
I've heard
I'm gonna buy one and probably make a video about it, but I'm not sold yet.
I've heard they're a little trashy. That's why I've turned them down several times.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it, but I mean they kicked out like one of their old models to me a long time ago, and it was just a straight normal kind of universal remote. It didn't have all the cool stuff, but we'll see if they can make it or not. I don't know.